Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Chris, you're down in Denver, so we're close, huh? I'm up near going towards Fort Collins, so we're not too far from each other.
Yeah, always nice to connect with somebody local. That's rare for me, so it's a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. You are you from Denver originally? Where'd you grow up? Give me some background.
I'm actually from New England, from Connecticut, so I'm a Patriots fan. It's fairly controversial out here, but I'm willing to put my hand up and say that. So I was New England for most of my life, and then New York City for a while, and then Virginia, and then we eventually came out to Colorado about 10 years ago to be near some family, and been here ever since.
Okay, so how old were you when you came to Colorado then?
Oh gosh, let's see, minus 10. I was 28
Yeah,
years old.
20. I got you. All right. You said you got family, married, kids. What's going on?
Yes, so my wife and I live here. We have three boys, so a very busy house, and we're fortunate that a lot of our family is still back east in New England and Virginia, but people are starting to migrate out here. So we have my in-laws out here. We also have my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and the family's sort of like starting to congregate in this area and throw down some roots. So it's we've sort of relocated out here.
All right. So your in-laws are here, but not your parents yet.
Not yet. They're still doing the retired thing. They're kind of traveling around the New England area. They like it up there.
I mean, it's okay in the summertime. I don't know about the winter.
They come out here every 4 to 6 weeks, which is great to spend a lot of time with the boys, and they'll stay for about a week at a time. So we actually get to see them a ton, which is nice, even though we don't live near each other.
That's good. I lived in Connecticut for, let's see, no, almost 3 years, I guess. And I remember the first winter there. I was so, wow, okay, this is,
It's a little
yeah,
cold, a
a
little
little
cold.
cold. The snow kind of stays for the year, right? Once it
Yeah.
lands.
Yeah, we used to call it the gray period, from like mid-October through early April. It's just sort of gray every single day.
My wife was a small town Texas girl, and I was a small town Oklahoma kid. And so when we went to New England, you can imagine, right? Like for us, it was a culture shock. It's just a different way of life, not good or bad, just different, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And my wife just never, I kind of started to fit in. Like I kind of was like, okay, I can do this. But my wife she just never got comfortable with it. She just, you know, and we tried to live in Avon, Simsbury area of Connecticut, which is not a poor neighborhood. And she always just felt, I don't know, out of place.
I know what you mean. Connecticut sort of has that stigma about it, especially the Avon Simsbury area, to be honest. But yeah, that's sort of Connecticut for you. It feels like one giant private school sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So three boys. How old are they?
We've got 6, 4, and 1.5.
Ooh, man, it's busy at your house, buddy.
Yeah, it's a wild house. You may hear somebody scream in the background, who knows. We got one little one home today, but the other two are at school. But it's busy here. I carve out my work hours very deliberately, and then I switch over to dad mode in the afternoon and through the evening, and that's kind of my day.
Yeah, you're at that stage where, let's see, by what, by 8:30, 9 o'clock, they're finally in bed where you just kind of sit down for a minute and just kind of like you're just completely wiped, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time.
Yep, exactly.
And
Every
you still
night.
got one, you still got one in diapers.
Oh yeah. hmm
Boy, I don't miss that at all. Okay. I mean, I miss our kids being here. We're empty nesters now, but yeah, the whole diaper phase, I could do without that. The best period is okay. So you got a four, you said 4 and 6. So yeah, like from 3 to 11 is really a magical time. Like you're right there, right in there. They're out of diapers. They can kind of take care of themselves a little bit. They're still hugging you. They're still like, Dad, love you. Dad, let's hang out. And then when 12, 13 comes, starts to fade a little bit. Then by 14, they're like, I don't know who you are and I know everything. So
No, I've heard a very similar story before. Yeah, 3 or 4 to like 11 is the golden years, and then the shift starts to come.
yeah, yeah. You're in that golden year with your 4 and 6 year old, right? They're still like, Dad's cool.
Yeah,
Dad's
they
listening.
they still like us. Yep, they still like us. They still think I'm cool and smart. So that's always a win.
What's your wife do?
She is a nurse at the Children's Hospital here in at the South Campus in Colorado, and she's been registered nurse for 15 years.
Ah, wow. Okay. All right. Very good. And what'd your folks do for a living before they retired? Your mom, dad?
My mom from way back in the day was an audiologist, and then she became a stay-at-home mom when my brother and I were born. And my dad was in law for about 40 years. He did a lot of corporate bankruptcies and restructurings, and he retired about 8 years ago, which is kind of crazy.
Is that where your love for numbers and the financial modeling and the whole helping businesses, is that where that kind of came from or no?
It's funny. No, not at all. In fact, I found a lot of that stuff really boring early on. I just one day I kind of took an interest in it with Excel and modeling of it was sort of like a puzzle to me, or kind of like Legos, which I always enjoyed as a kid. How can I assemble this spreadsheet basically to tell me about a business? So it's sort of a self-realized interest once I had a little bit of experience on the job. So my dad has always been like a great advisor to me, and he helps me a lot still all the time. But the interest in like my core skill just sort of came from working on the job.
I see. And you majored in accounting. So you obviously liked numbers.
Well, reluctantly. That was another thing my dad nudged me to do. So
Uh,
what a lot of people don't know about me is before I got into business, I actually used to be a fine arts and Spanish double major. And I was headed down like the path of liberal arts. And my dad kind of gave me a nudge of like, hey, just go ahead and get this degree because it at least gives you options on the job front. You can always do what you want, but at least
mm,
gives you some optionality. And he was right. Accounting, even though I found it pretty dry at the time, was really helpful in getting a job in the business world to kick things off. And so I shifted my skill set a little bit. To be honest, I struggled with accounting in school. I didn't like it. It confused me. I found it really boring. It was another thing that I sort of taught myself again through financial modeling because you have to know how the pieces fit in order to build the models correctly. So I learned accounting the hard way, basically on the job, but I had enough raw skills from undergrad to at least get me started.
I got you. What were you going to do with that Spanish degree? Well, what was your plan? Were you going to like, I'm going to travel internationally and blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
Oh, there
What were
was
you?
zero plan. None. I had no plan. I loved fine arts and I didn't know what to do with that either.
Were you like did you have a good time in college? Was there a little partying in there or were you like library straight A student? What kind of student were you, Chris?
Oh, middle ground. I
Middle
was
ground.
a I was definitely a good student, but I had some fun too.
Is that where you met your wife?
It is.
And what year? Like, well, give me the story. I want to. Like, were you at a party? Were you at a frat party? Like, what happened? How'd you meet her?
It was at the end of senior year, and we were actually on spring break of all places, even though we went to the same school. We never met. and we
Uh,
met on spring break and kind of kicked things off from there, and then got together and been together ever since.
was this spring break like down in the Redneck Riviera spring break with the crazy stuff? Where at? Where was this at?
It was in Mexico.
Okay. Which you see her and you're like, oh, you went to Villanova. You go to Villanova. You're like, oh, wow, me too.
Well, a whole like crew of people from the school went, probably over a 50 or 100 people went on this big,
Oh,
massive thing.
I
And,
see, I
everybody
see,
had their
I
own
see.
group and then
I
groups
got you.
merged and that kind of thing.
And then she was with the elite group, and you were with the thug group, and she's like, I feel sorry for Chris, so I guess I'll
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah, basically. I was just like a scrub, doing the best I could. And she gave me the time of day, thankfully.
That's good. Okay. By the way, accounting. Yeah. So I've told this story on the show before. I went to a liberal arts school in Oklahoma, and I was going to be an accounting major at first. Then what happened was a friend of mine. I was in accounting one, I guess is what they called it, the first one, accounting one, I guess. A friend of mine got the tests, like all the tests, the answers to all the tests or whatever. I don't know how he got them. And so I was like, oh, cool. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to study. I don't have to learn anything. I got the tests. So basically, I cheated all the way through accounting one. Well, when accounting two came, guess what? I was screwed. I was like, okay, now I don't know. And I can't, how do I climb out of this? I switched to communications because it was the easiest thing I could do. The tip there, if you're a student, is yeah, if you get a little help from somebody that's got the answers, just remember it's going to come back to haunt you when you try to go to the next level. So that's what happened. Anyway,
That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, at some point you have to know it on your
at
own.
some point you have to know it, right? Okay, so you start moving through your career. Did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Because I mean, was that anywhere in your plan? Walk me through how that happened.
It was always in my blood a little bit. I would
Okay.
just sort of struggle in the corporate setting when it came to meetings that I felt were unnecessary or just weirdly I just remember like pressing the elevator button and being like, "Oh man, I'm going up this same elevator again. Everybody's dressed in the same blue shirt and I feel like I'm just doing this every day and there's a lot of wasted time here." And that was at various places and I don't consider anything a rat race. Like I actually really enjoyed a lot of the people that I worked with, and I learned a ton from them, and I still communicate with all of them today. So it was more a personal choice about managing the environment that I was in. And that led me to like I always had ideas, but I never really took action on anything until later in my career when I felt like I finally had enough skills and network set aside that that I could at least give something a try on the side. And once I got a taste of generating income completely on my own and not getting a paycheck, I was kind of hooked. It's weirdly addicting in a way, and
Oh, no doubt.
there's an endorphin release when you say, "Hey, I went and I got this dollar all by myself. Nobody told me how to get it. Nobody wrote me a paycheck." And so once I had that, then I was hooked and I really doubled down on building my business.
And so you started moonlighting at first. You had your full-time job. You did a little stuff on the side. You were like, okay, let me see if I can make this work. Is that right?
Yeah, first client was my father-in-law. He was nice enough to take me on. He works in development and he just said, "Hey, I could use some help on the Excel and modeling side." And so he basically got me up and running in terms of, "Hey, you can actually do this," and basic stuff that I didn't know how to do, like get a company name. Here, you have to actually send me an invoice, things like that. Get an email address and kind of, get me in gear. And
Operating agreement. What's that?
yeah,
What's
exactly. So he was my first person to kind of really get me into it, and I would help him on and off throughout the years. And then
yeah.
as I got more experience and more skills, I started to expand my client base a little bit. But he was really the spark that got it started for me.
All right. So you obviously have your dad and your father-in-law both as very influential in your life and still help you today, it sounds like, which is super awesome. When did you tell us about the moment where you jumped the creek, where you're like, okay, you called your boss and said, I quit. I got my own thing. Yeah, tell us about it.
I had decided that around, about 10 years into my private equity career that I had enough of a network and enough skill set to try to go in and do something full time. And I knew that I wanted to do financial modeling because I was always really good at it. So we talked about it a little bit early on. That self-identified interest became something that I was the best at pretty much every company that I worked for. And a lot of people said, wow, I didn't know that you could do this stuff. And so I basically figured out since I'm better at this than most people, then I can charge for it. And so with that skill and with that network, I said, okay, I'm gonna go do that. And so at the end of 2019 is kind of when I made that decision. And then of course COVID happened. And so my whole business did not get off to a great start. And I was without income for a long time, but that turned out to be a business blessing for me because of some of the stuff that I did during that time. But
Like,
I basically made the decision with experience and network.
okay, so what happened? If you don't have to go into all the details, but I'm just curious. So yeah, end of 2019, early 2020, you're thinking, boom, I'm off to the races. A couple of months later, the country shuts down. You're like, holy shit. Okay, now what do I do? Uh, Talk to me. How did you survive that little downtime? Give the listeners some advice there and what some of the things you did.
So first off, I didn't know what to do. I was basically just doing the stay-at-home dad thing for a while. And my wife, who was amazing, she picked up extra shifts and basically covered the family gap for as long as she could while I tried to figure out how to get clients. And she did that for about a year, if not more. And so what ended up happening at the time was thankfully this thing Zoom came out, right, which we're using right now, and it opened this world of remote work. And suddenly the people that I was either going to go travel to see or just go visit on site or something like that, they were able to communicate remotely. And then people who couldn't go into the office needed help with the people that they usually would see in the office. And suddenly I had a role to play
Ah,
where I could be this outsourced finance person when
mhm.
nobody else was really available.
Very good.
And so that wave of remote work is something that I rode to build the consulting side of the business. At the same time, when there was really nothing going on, I decided to sit down and record a course, a financial modeling course, because I had said to myself, this was so complicated when I was younger. And there's so much stuff that I wish I knew then that I know now. And so I'm just going to record something and pretend I'm talking to a first year analyst. And I did that for several months, while thankfully my mother-in-law was around to watch some of the kids because everybody was home. And so I created this course and I just had it sitting on the shelf. I didn't know what to do with it at the time, but at least I had it, this digital asset. And so from there, I kept going with the consulting and then started to market the coursework a little bit. And then eventually a shift came where that education piece became my primary focus.
How did you get your recordings? You're talking into your recordings. How did you get the recordings into a format for a course? Did you have somebody help you with that? Did you do that? Did you pay a consultant for that?
No, so there's a website that I use called Thinkific, and there's a bunch of others that are just like it, that's like an online course hosting platform. And so I just recorded my videos just like we're doing right now on screen, and then I was able to upload them to this website called Thinkific. And what it does is it hosts the course for you. It also lets you build a website, and then it also handles all the payment processing on the back end. And so you pay them a monthly or annual subscription, whatever it is, and it's sort of a end-to-end solution for a course creator, so you can mostly be focused on the creation piece and not having to build out a custom website. So I've been
Can
using that
you,
since 2020, and I still use it.
okay, can you just talk into it randomly, or does it have to be clean and formatted properly, or it'll clean all that up for you?
Well, if you want to do video editing, you'd have to do that separately. So Thinkific is like a hosting platform. For editing, I used to go in and clean up the audio a little bit. But
That's
to be honest, it wasn't all that well done. I mean, I did it by myself. The audio could certainly be better. I'm working on remastering some of the old stuff now. It's what I've learned about online education is it doesn't have to be perfect or flashy. It just
right.
has to be effective. And if it's effective, then people will get value out of it. They don't need cinema quality stuff to look at.
absolutely true. That goes for any social media too. I think we have definitely reached a point in this world where people are, it doesn't have to be Hollywood production style, perfect everything. Yeah, as long as the content's good and they're getting something out of it, that's all they care about most of the time. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that before we start talking about the business more and giving a full explanation, I want to ask you that 12 months of no pay, holy crap, I'm stay-at-home dad. I'm sitting here. I'm recording into this damn thing. I don't have any money coming in. My father-in-law is looking at me like I'm a loser. My wife's wondering. My wife, my wife's wondering if I want to go back to work. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have quit my job. Oh my God, this sucks. You're not feeling super manly right there, right? In that time, right? I mean, that's real. We're just keeping it real here. I know there had to be nights where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? Right. I mean, right, Chris? I mean, what I guess my point is, am I right about all that? And give some encouraging words to somebody else that might be going through that.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe were you staying at our house during that time? Seems like you have a pretty good pulse on that.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's 100% true. I will say that that was weirdly sort of the best and worst time of my life in a way, because I had all this perspective now on what it meant to be home, on what it meant to raise kids, and understand the gravity of that, how much responsibility was, and how much that is its own full-time job. And suddenly, instead of being stuck in meetings, I was like with my kids all day and taking them on walks, and it was great. I loved that part of it. At the same time, I felt really guilty because I wasn't generating any income. My wife had gone back to work full time, plus taking up all these extra shifts just to kind of fill the gap for us. And the job market was completely cold,
Yep.
so I was kind of in a panic and I would go back and forth every week of what am I going to do? And we're dipping into savings. I'm kind of like just freaking out and nobody's taking me on because nobody knows anything with
Yep.
COVID.
Yep.
And so it was it was very difficult. It was also very eye-opening. It was a nice time for reaffirmation that I had family that supported me, and it was nice to see the other side of things in terms of being home and having that dad life and knowing that I wanted to, from there, build a lifestyle type of business where I could be a dad first and sort of an entrepreneur second. And it motivated me to not want to get a traditional job again. And it
Mhm.
motivated me to double down on the little bit of consulting that I had done. And so I went back to my father-in-law. Then I went to my uncle, and then people I used to work for or work with. I
Good.
did a lot of work in private equity, and they owned all these portfolio companies that needed financial modeling help. And so I said, "Hey, I can help you with this. I can do this for you." And those engagements started to pick up to where all of a sudden I was actually making a little bit of actual money. And I said, okay, if I keep doing this, then I can maybe just maybe break us even. I wasn't even thinking about a business at that point. I'm like, let me just get us through, maybe get the lifestyle back on track.
Uh,
And then it started to have success. And so I said, okay, this can actually really become a business. And so then I turned it into from a hobby or survival mechanism into something that I pursued full time by trying to do more networking and marketing to get more clients and more leads. And all of that just came out of the clarity from being at home during that time.
I got you. Yeah. Then finally you started coming out of it to where you're like, wow, this could work. I can make this work. I'm making a decent living here.
Yeah. And so two things happened that were really interesting. One was I had a couple weeks in a row where my weekly income was exceedingly higher than my old salary.
Okay.
And now it wasn't for a full year, it was just a couple weeks in a row. But I said, whoa, my time is worth a lot more as an independent contractor than is as an employee.
Ah.
And so that was really eye-opening for me that my time, even though time is not scalable, it's at least more valuable.
Mhm.
And so I did that for a while. I built up a business for about a year and a half, and I made more income my first year than I did in my old salary, and I was thrilled. It was a home run.
Were you slowly bumping up your hourly rate or your project rate too? Were you edging up your prices or no?
I was. So every new client, I bumped it by a little bit until somebody told me to go kick rocks, basically. And
Uh,
my rate has tripled since I first started,
that's great.
just because you have to push. And I would say that,
Yeah.
one
Yep.
one thing for anybody who's listening, I'll say when it comes to pricing, you just name your price and then you stop talking. Because the second you justify your price, you're telling the customer the price is too high,
Good tip.
right?
Yeah.
They can decide whether it's too high or not. So I learned that lesson sometimes the hard way, right? Name your price and stop talking. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so what ended up happening was the consulting business was going great, but I started working myself out of a job, and the leads started to disappear because I would build these great financial models, but I would teach somebody at the company how to use it. And they'd say, thank you so much. And here's somebody else that you might be able to work with. And I kind of would do the referral thing for a while, but then that eventually grew cold.
Mm-hmm.
And so income started to drop and I started to freak out a little bit again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to go to LinkedIn. I just heard that it was a decent place to start putting online content. And I thought it was just an online resume. I didn't really think much about it. I barely used it. And I said, okay, well, maybe if I just put a couple things on here, I could start getting clients. I don't know, right? Just make myself a little bit more visible. And so I totally just started winging it, started putting content out there each and every day related to all kinds of finance stuff. I didn't know what I want to talk about. The financial modeling stuff, though, really resonated. I got a lot of views. Suddenly, I got a lot about inbound messages, and then people asking if I taught this stuff. And it opened up an avenue for me to promote this course that I've been sitting on for like 2 years,
Perfect.
right? And so I started to learn, okay, now I'm switching from consultant to educator, and this is so much more scalable because all I have to do is type some words into a computer every day, hit post, and a lot of people are going to see it. And once I saw that that was working, I mean I doubled down on that. I quadrupled down on it
Yeah.
because yeah,
By the way, for
go
the listeners, 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, just so everybody knows, which is super impressive. Yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I started with zero, or maybe I don't know, 300 people that I had from sitting on LinkedIn for over 10 years and doing nothing with it. And after just about a month or so, all these followers started to pile up. And I'm not a social media person at all. I don't do followers or any of that kind of thing, but I saw that it was creating inbound leads and business.
Yep.
And my goal was to survive. And so I said, okay, I am going to do this as hard as I possibly can. I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to learn how the website works, how the algorithm works. And I'm going to be promoting content on there every single day to build this audience because that first passive income sale that I got where somebody went to the website and bought my course was a huge rush. And I sat there and realized I didn't really do much because all the work had been done in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
so I immediately saw that as the future of the company, and I've been doing it ever since, basically.
Fantastic. So right now, give us the 3-minute elevator pitch for the business right now as it stands. By the way, financialmodelingeducation.com is the website. Give us the pitch, Chris. Go for it.
The pitch is that financial models are very complicated to build and they're full of errors. And me having made all these mistakes over my career, I've learned how to build them the right way. And so anybody who's working in FP&A or private equity, I teach them how to build three-statement models, LBO models, or 13-week cash flow models, which is a critical skill for a career in finance. And I teach it more like we're sitting at the kitchen table than in a conference room is what I like to say. So it's a very simple way to learn a complex skill that you need for a career in finance.
Do you target PE? It sounds like, well, what about business owners themselves? Small startup, mid cap business owners, family businesses, any of that or no?
It's all the above because anybody can benefit from a financial model. And if you ever need to raise capital one day or you need to take on debt from a lender or something like that, you do need a fully built out three-statement model for them to assess the viability of the business. So it is for everybody. I've worked with mom and pops, I've worked with solopreneurs, and I've worked with $100 million and sometimes larger companies.
Now, I'm going to ask you a very rudimentary question that you and I know the answer to, but for the listeners, especially for the mom and pop business owners or the sole proprietors, Johnny's welding service, whatever, will you please, for them in commoner language, explain the difference between a financial model and a cash flow statement?
Sure. So a cash flow statement, I like to think of it as that's just the cash coming in and out of your bank account. And you do the best you can to say, well, here's what the cash was yesterday when I opened up my bank website, and let me make a guess as to what that's going to be in a couple weeks. That to me is a cash flow forecast or a cash flow statement, basically. A financial model is a little bit more technical where you're bringing in a lot of accounting and you bring in what's called the income statement, which is your profits minus your expenses. I mean, sorry, your revenue minus your expenses. And then the balance sheet, which is sort of a record of all your accounts and business record at the time. So it is a more sophisticated way to present your financials, whereas a cash forecast is really the critical piece for somebody running their own business. I would start there. Just see if you have enough cash in the bank to keep the lights on.
Yep.
If you need something more sophisticated down the road, it sometimes is worth learning that on your own. It's also worth it sometimes to just outsource that skill, depending on, if you're more of an operator versus more of a finance person.
Will you do a 13-week cash flow, or do you just do financial models?
I do them all. So a 13-week cash flow is a type of financial model, basically.
Yeah, understood. You'd be surprised. Well, I know you won't be surprised. Listeners will be surprised how many small business owners, they just don't have it. They run the business by the checkbook. They look at the checking account. They're like, okay, cool. We got 100,000 in a checkbook. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Like, that's it.
Yes, you're right. I am not surprised to hear that. But that's what I see pretty much all the time. And a lot of bringing in a little bit of financial sophistication into that picture is to help them create a forecast so that they can just do basic things like make payroll or take owner distributions. Forget about raising cash. That
Mhm.
would come down the road once you had some profitability in the company. But having that foresight is really helpful. I mean, you need to know if you're going to be able to make a credit card payment or not. So you kind of start there as opposed to always looking backwards. You want to try to look forwards a bit.
Yeah, it really helps you make great decisions. We just had, at Riderflex, our primary job is recruiting and staffing, but we do a little business consulting because I was an old operations executive and I had ran a couple of $40 million consumer good companies. And so we will jump out and do some consulting from time to time. And here's a perfect example. I recently was helping a husband-wife team, small company. They do a couple of $1 million a year. And they were asking me, hey, we want to get your opinion on whether or not we need to hire this person. They wanted to hire a couple of positions, and they also were trying to make a decision on whether or not to get a new office space. I said, happy to help. Send me your financials, because first thing I need to know is whether or not you even have the money to hire an additional person, etc. No cash flow, no budget, no financial model, just your QuickBooks P&L statement and how much cash was in the bank that day. It's the first thing I told him. I said, listen, I'm happy to help you with some of these hiring decisions, but I can't credibly give you the right opinion on whether or not you should hire an additional person for your team, because right now I don't even know really if you can afford that. So first thing let's do is get your numbers in order and get some, doing what you do, Chris.
Right. No, I mean, the truth is that's an eye-opening experience for a lot of people because there's so much out there that they realize they didn't know in the first place.
Yes.
And then once you start to manage the business using a financial model, it's pretty much impossible to go back because you now have so much foresight into what might happen
That's right.
and what you can do and some of the downside scenarios. And it doesn't have to be the most complicated thing in the world. It just has to be good enough so that you as an operator says, I know what to do next with this company. Whether it's call somebody up to get collections or hire somebody or whatever it is. It just needs to be just accurate enough so when I go into work the next day, I know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep.
That's the real purpose.
Couldn't agree more. Okay. Did you or have you decided whether or not you want to make this bigger? Do you want I mean, could you take on more revenue and hire people and you've passed on doing that because you want to just run it by yourself? Like, what's your strategy around the growth of the business?
Yes, so my vision is to keep it small. I just want to stay a one-man band. I don't want to have employees. I really want maximum flexibility. As a result, I have turned down consulting work because that is a trade of a hour in, dollar out revenue structure. And so my time isn't scalable. And I've been fortunate enough with this education business that that is scalable. And so I can generate the revenue of multiple people as one person because I have that online channel. And so my vision is to stay solo. Because like I said earlier, I want it to be a lifestyle business where I'm with my family, and the thought of traveling and just running it out of a laptop if I need to do something is a really nice thought. And I don't want to be in a position where I have to manage somebody or worry about making their payroll or getting it too big to where I'm suddenly no longer focused on the life that I want to create. I'm just focused on the company and just trying to stay afloat. So
Okay.
my
Okay.
goal is to scale if I can as a one person shop.
Okay. Back to the website. So what, how does, what's the model for you? Do I sign up for a course? Do I sign up for ongoing education? Tell us how it works.
So everything is a self-study course. It's on demand. I release updates from time to time, but for the most part, it's the skills are evergreen because the accounting laws don't change all that much. And so if somebody signs up, they get lifetime access. There's no timer or anything like that. And then they always get access to me as well for Q&A or just one-on-one help or whatever it might be. And people can either choose to just do the courses or they can add an extra hour of consulting time to meet with me directly if they'd like. But I like to be close to all the students. I like to be available on email. I don't outsource to a VA. I like it to be something where they truly do get access to me and they learn this great skill along the way. And I want to make sure that they have it 8 years from now, when they get a new job and they say, "Oh, how did I do that?" I can go back and look at Chris's course and not have to pay all over again or have it be subject to some kind of timeline. So it's supposed to be an all-in educational thing that you get forever.
That's pretty sweet. So I pay one fee and I'm good to go lifetime.
That's it.
And are there different courses you pay for? Or it's just an all-inclusive course.
You can pay them one-off, and sometimes I will offer that to people if they just say, "Hey, can I have this specific one?" And I'll just send them a link to do that. But it's generally the holistic suite of products because it kind of guides you from beginner to advanced. And so the best fit for somebody is just to enroll in the whole program.
Pretty sweet. I mean, that's a nice offer. So it's not really an recurring SaaS business necessarily, right? I guess not. It's a one-time SaaS business, which wouldn't be super attractive for investors. They want to see recurring, but you don't care about that because you're not trying to raise cash or grow it. So that's fine with you.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a recurring SaaS. I've toyed with some recurring revenue products and they've gone okay, but not great. And I think ways that I can diversify is I could potentially monetize my newsletter stream, which is sort of like the middle of my funnel with sponsored ads or things like that. So there's a way to get recurring or what people like to say SaaS-like revenue, where it's sort of recurring. But it hasn't been a primary focus because, like you said, I'm not in the market. Recurring revenue does fetch a higher multiple, but it doesn't make non-recurring fetch no multiple. There's still value there, and I'm not really looking to take anything out to market for the foreseeable future because I just wanted to be that lifestyle company.
Which is absolutely fine. That's one of the things people, I think the average person, they watch the movies or whatever, and they think, oh, all these businesses are, you start a business, you raise cash, you sell it for millions of dollars, you ride off into Never Never Land. Actually, no, that's a very tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. Most companies are small business, lifestyle, family-owned businesses that just produce a nice life, let families live the life they want, and that's it. And that is perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, definitely. You don't have to go out creating some unicorn, and sell it for billions of dollars. You also get completely exhausted going that route. And I'm not speaking against it by any means, but like that is the opposite of a lifestyle business. You know,
Yeah.
and like you said, there are plenty that just kind of get the job done, take care of the family, and then you could sell it if you want. You probably could at some point, but you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah. It- that's what Riderflex is. It's a lifestyle business that allows me to do just like you. I purposely quit my executive job of running consumer goods companies because I wanted to do something that allowed me to live the life I wanted, which was work remotely. If I want to take my camper and go to the mountains and take my Starlink dish and work from the mountains for 2 weeks with my Starlink internet hookup, I can. And the ability to do that, there's almost no price for me. There's almost no price on that for me, right? It's hard for me to even put a value on what that means to me. I always tell people, yeah, you could call me right now and be like, hey, we'll pay you 500 grand a year to come be a CEO again for a company in Cleveland. I'd be like, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Uh, I want to ask you two more things here as we get towards the back end.
Sure.
Advice for listeners on their social media, specifically LinkedIn, since that's where you dominate. Somebody's listening to this episode and they're like, holy shit, how did he get to 100,000 followers on LinkedIn? Now, I realize we could do a whole hour on that topic, but do you
Mhm.
want to give a couple of 2 or 3 tips here real quick?
Yeah, the short of it is, first off, figure out what you are probably better at than most people. And usually that's a skill that you have from work. So what are you good at? Not necessarily what you're passionate about. Just get on there and start writing about it every day. Or to start maybe 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be every day. Just start writing about it online. What that's going to do is, the website's going to pick up signals of what you write about. It's going to start showing you people that write about similar stuff who are going to have more, bigger following than you do as you're starting out. You just start commenting on their posts, create some visibility for yourself. And to give people a specific formula, on a perfect day, I will post once and I will comment 10 times on other people's stuff because it expands the visibility, expands the network. People
Mhm.
see you, they come check you out, okay, this guy maybe has something to say. And then the other thing on the back end is when people click on your profile, LinkedIn is no longer this digital resume like I think a lot of people assume it is. It is now a content platform, and your homepage should serve as a sales page. And so when people click on it, you need to tell them how you can help them in
Mhm.
5 seconds or less. It's got to be in the banner, it's got to be in your tagline, and you need to have a professional photo. It can't just be some selfie or something you took like on my spring break vacation. It doesn't cut it. Like it's got to look professional. But if you can communicate to people how you can solve their problem in under 5 seconds, and then you post about that every day, and then you also make comments to that effect, that is a pretty good way to just start building up that muscle and building up that visibility.
Very good. Excellent advice. I agree with all of that. Okay. Next topic, and I want to spend some time on this is, well, first of all, just congratulations on everything you've done. You've built a nice life here for you and your family. You got past the early stages of opening a business, then you got past COVID. You kept pushing forward, and now you are currently living the life that you wanted to live with your lifestyle business. Congratulations.
Thanks. That means a lot. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's hard to do. I always tell people, and some people get mad when I say this, it's kind of easy to be an employee versus an entrepreneur. I mean, there's just so much more stress that comes to being an entrepreneur. I mean, I could spend hours and hours talking about it. When you're an employee, I don't care what anybody said, because I've been both. It's just not the same. You don't have the same stresses. When you're an entrepreneur, you are living it every minute. Even when you do go to the mountains and you're trying to relax next to your campfire, you're thinking about it, right? You're just like, oh my God, I'm not working on the business right now. Oh gosh. Anyway, I want to ask about, we're recording this, by the way, on May 1st, 2024. I want to get the dating here for future reference. The AI effect, Chris. I want to talk about it in general and and also how it's affecting the accounting finance world, or how it could affect it. And now you seem like a very smart guy. You seem like you got your finger on the pulse of what's going on. I know you're reading the news. I know you're watching things closely. I can almost assure the listeners you've played with all these large language models and you're figuring out what they can do with regards to the spreadsheets and modeling and stuff. And I know you've had some moments where you're like, oh shit, okay, what's this mean for my business? What's this means for the future? Talk to me, Chris. How are you? Let's start with the 30,000 foot. How are you feeling in general about this AI crunch we're having on the marketplace?
I feel less nervous about it now than I did when it first came out.
Okay.
But I did feel like I was in a panic weekly that it would just replace my entire job in business. That nerve has not gone away. At the same time, I've been trying to push AI pretty well to build models or build financial data, and so far it hasn't done the best job in the world.
Okay.
Um, Somebody
Okay.
though that I'd like to mention who does a really good job of this, his name is Matan Feldman, and he's the founder of Wall Street Prep, which is a great online education company. He
Okay.
has put out some really clever videos of teaching AI to build some Excel models. So if anybody's interested in that, I would definitely go take a look. I always watch his stuff in detail. So
Okay.
I would say he's a little better at it than I am. I am messing with it constantly just to see what it can do, what it can't do. And I think there will certainly be a future where it has the ability to replace or supplant, 80% of a 1 to 3 year entry level type job, like an analyst role. And I think I could argue some of that is maybe already present. When you get a little bit more complex with some of the modeling that I've done, definitely AI could not handle it as of today. Maybe in the future, but I think I don't necessarily see it replacing humans. I just see it becoming this tool that accelerates our work, makes us faster. I think we're a long way off. I may eat my words for saying this, but like a long way off from an investor writing a check to invest in a company with the financial model purely made by AI with no human oversight.
Mhm.
I
Good way to
certainly
look at it.
wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if modelers down the road become fixers or debuggers of models created by AI, there's still a core skill today of learning how they work in the first place. Because AI is always going to make mistakes, at least for the foreseeable future. And so somebody who knows how these things work today will be in a position to fix them tomorrow when AI takes a more relevant role. So I see it as a complement that moves things forward. I don't know that it replaces stuff, but I could certainly see myself creating a financial modeling with AI type course down the road once it becomes more mainstream. There's still too much stuff out there that, if I create a course today, it'll be obsolete tomorrow. So I've got to wait until Microsoft has it fully integrated in their Office suite, and I've used it for a couple of years before I'm even remotely confident teaching something like that to people.
Wow. Three things there that I want to touch on. First one is, before I forget, yeah, how fast it changes. Yeah, you learn something new comes out, you learn it, you get really good at it, and then a month later, it's like, oh, never mind. Now there's this.
Right.
So that is definitely frustrating, I guess is the word I'm looking for, because you're trying to, a lot of people are trying to stay up with this stuff and trying to learn it. And they're like, okay, here's this new tool. Let me learn how to use this. I got to get really good at this. Oh, but never mind. Now there's this. So yeah, that is a challenge. The other two things I wanted to mention, I really loved what you said about constantly testing AI and large language models to see how good they're getting and what they can do versus what you do as a professional. And I think that is wonderful advice for anybody listening to this podcast that does a job from a laptop and a keyboard. It's really good advice to say, okay, Today, it might not replace your job, but you should be aware and studying and watching and testing and, push ChatGPT to answer whatever questions you're answering or whatever task you're doing. Let's say whatever task you might do, like if you're a copywriter, God forbid if you're a copywriter, because if you are, I don't, you might want to change professions, but push the large language models to see, can it do it faster and better than whatever it is you're responsible for tactically on a daily basis. And when you regularly start seeing like, wow, okay, my task is X, Y, and Z, and I already know from my own testing that an LLM can do my task faster and better and cheaper. When you get to that point, you should pivot. You should pivot. You should make changes. You should work to figure out what you're going to do differently in your career or in your job. And so your point, testing it. And I think that's what you said you're doing. You're like, yeah, I'm watching, I'm testing, I'm seeing how good it's getting. Because when it does start to replace things I do, I'm going to pivot again, just like you have already done. You've pivoted several times. So I love the testing thing you said. The other thing you mentioned was an investor. Okay, yeah, you might use ChatGPT to do some of the early work, we'll call it, in the project, or build some things, whatever. You're going to want a human towards that back end to okay it, touch it, sign off on it. You're right. As of today, I agree. If an investor was going to write a check, you might say, hey, Mr. Investor, look, by the way, I use AI to do a lot of this early grunt work, but I'm going to look at it. I'm going to check it. I'm going to make sure it's got Chris's sign off before I hand it to you. Yes, I think most investors want it that way, at least as of May 1st, 2024.
Right. No, you're
think,
right. And I think what's going to happen is AI is going to play a material role, especially in large companies that have huge data sets, and it can do a
yeah,
lot of great analysis on that. I
yeah,
don't think it's going to have quite the impact on the middle market. I'm
okay,
thinking about like an agricultural company based like maybe out here in Colorado, right? They don't necessarily care about overhauling their entire system with AI. They just care about, what's the weather doing this year? What is it going to yield? And what
yeah,
are all our vendors and customers looking like? And they don't necessarily want AI to solve that problem for them. There's a sense of tradition there where, yeah, there might even be a better solution. You might be able to plug in AI into some of that data, but there may not be that interest or frankly that need. The edge that is gained is not going to offset the work that they do already. And so well, I thought everything came out like, guns blazing, AI is going to like destroy everybody's job and we're all screwed and going to like obey the robots soon. I feel like it has changed a little bit where it's now it's a tool that we're using to
okay.
help us make our jobs better as opposed to something that replaces our work altogether.
I think I agree with that as of today. I'm somewhat nervous about how long that stage lasts. One more question. I know we're almost out of time. So when you hear people like Elon Musk say we're all going to be on universal basic income and robots are going to do 80% of the jobs on planet Earth at some point down the road, what do you think? Do you think he's right? Do you think what do you think? It's hard to predict, isn't it?
It's too hard to say. I suppose maybe that's theoretically possible, but I don't no idea.
It's
No
hard to
clue.
know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. Hey, here's the deal, man. If I'm on universal basic income and I can just chill in the mountains and go hiking and camping and take my Jeep out and go trail riding and I don't have to work, that's fine with me.
I think a lot of people share that vision.
Let's just make sure that universal basic income check is enough to keep all the masses happy. That will be the key, and we could do a whole episode on that topic. Um, Chris, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. Great stuff, man. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.